Everybody, we are back with another one. So, a few days ago, a subscriber hit me up and he was like, "Hey, dude, have you watched MrRoflWaffles' new video?" And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't really follow COD Zombies, these days too much." And he was like, "Oh, that's good because it's actually a Destiny 2 video." And I was like, "Huh, that's pretty cool." For you guys that don't know, MrRoflWaffles is a huge, Call of Duty Zombies content creator. He has been for years. I think we actually started our channel around the same time, about 13 years ago. Um, and I thought that was pretty interesting because I didn't even know Milo played Destiny 2. I had no idea. Like I said, I haven't really been following that scene for a while. So we are going to check out the video, and I had no idea what this video could even be about. So
the Destiny team are hiding something very sneaky inside the reveal announcement for Edge of Fate, which they just posted about, coming on May 6th, 2025. And so in this video, I'm going to dig into that secret, and we're going to use the whiteboard a little bit and just sort of dig in with Photoshop to try and get to the bottom of this very
He's like the crazy
mystery.
person.
Before we go any further, I will be streaming Last Wish as a blind solve with Datto and a bunch of other Destiny folks this weekend on Twitch. So make sure that you are following my twitch.tv/MrRoflWaffles linked in the description, and see you there this weekend.
Wait, what does that mean? He's going to be doing the Last Wish blind solve with Datto. Like, Last Wish is a really old raid. Dude, I'm assuming they're thinking that this has something to do with Last Wish then. But that raid's been beaten to death, man, so I don't...
So let's start with the post itself so that you've got full context of what's going on. Earlier today, the Destiny the Game account tweeted out saying, "Join us on May 6th, 2025. We're going to be revealing the Edge of Fate and the upcoming year of Destiny 2. Now, to some of you, this might come as a surprise because it's called the Edge of Fate. Like, what? Wasn't it going to be called Frontiers or Apollo or something? And basically, I guess the public name, as opposed to the code name, is the Edge of Fate. Presumably because of the fact that the Bungie team figured that rather than getting excited about Frontiers, we'd get much more excited about edging here. But that's not what excites me. What excites me is this, which might look like the same thing. But if you look in the corners of this image, there are some unusual symbols, and they're here on the right-hand side as well. These weird symbols.
I didn't even notice
got alerted to these in the replies by Liam here, who said ARG brain rot kicking in, and then screenshotted them for me. And I was like, wait, I didn't even notice what the hell the deal was with these. Can we translate these, or what's happening here?
So
I then tweeted about translating them a little bit more because I haven't done the raids in Destiny. I don't know what the 9 is. The extent of my experience with 9 symbols is that one Crucible map that you can play in private matches to practice ground skating, which I've done a lot of. But other than that...
Wait. So I was right. So Milo's not really a Destiny 2 player. Okay, I didn't think so. Because, I've never seen him cover it. It is funny. Like, he said he's never done a raid or anything. So I guess that's what he meant by, a blind run. But if he's doing it with Datto, it's not really a blind run, dude. Datto could probably damn near solo most of that raid. And he's probably got his whole team of cracked players with him anyway. So that's not really a blind run, man. But, I do think that's funny because I'm like, why is Milo talking about Destiny 2? So it's 9 symbols. That's really interesting because obviously that's pointing towards the 9, right? It is funny that he's been practicing ground skating too. He's never done a raid, but he can ground skate. I don't know, I just thought that was kind of funny.
I don't really have a lot of familiarity with this apart from this pointed out by Nico, who said the middle symbol here might refer to entering or infinite heavy ammo or something because it's the shape you need to get catapulted through when playing Dares of Eternity. That's one thing that I have done. But generally, it seems like sort of jury's out on these symbols, let alone what these corner symbols might mean. So let's talk a little bit about the symbols themselves and make a couple of initial observations. For this, we're going to use the whiteboard a little bit. Sorry, Taustetti, you're going to have to be on the back burner here for a little bit. So our 3 9 symbols look like this. 1, that's the second, and that's the third. The first simple observation is that if you count the lines here and you count the circumference of each circle as one line, this would be 1, 2, 3,
All right.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
9 lines. And so extending on from that, if you count the spaces enclosed by the lines, 3, 7, 8, 9. So this
Okay.
all feels pretty symbolic of the 9, right?
Yes.
But when I see these symbols, there's certain other things that they also evoke in my brain. Like, I'm a physics graduate. That's what I did at university. And
Oh, he did
you do a
get
lot of
us.
maths when you study physics.
So I just want to point out that probably about the time I stopped covering Call of Duty zombie content, because I made my start doing Call of Duty zombie content, doing like basically like theory videos, guides, and things like that. But I did a lot of theory videos on like the storyline and things like that. But about that time, I know that Milo was talking about not doing YouTube anymore, and he was really torn. He's like, I'm really torn between can I do YouTube and can I keep going to college, things like that. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I'm just happy that to find out that he graduated. I guess he ended up, getting his degree. So, and he's still doing YouTube. So he got his cake and he ate it too. Good for you, Milo.
And I mean, this isn't complex maths by any means. This is stuff you just learn in, I don't know, like middle school? I don't know how the American school system works. But if we look at this circle specifically, let's actually draw it nice and big.
That's what she said.
Like so. That's a pretty good hand-drawn circle, eh? Not bad. If this is our origin point just there, then what this kind of reminds me of is the opposite face of a right-angled triangle. You would then draw like that, right? So you would draw a radius out, that would be your hypotenuse, a radius out to the edge of the circle, and then this line here could be your opposite side, and this would be your adjacent side, and this would be your hypotenuse,
this
right?
Is like
so
middle
it kind
school.
of gives me that vibe. It's just the incomplete form of that triangle, and this is going to become relevant in a second, so just kind of cook with me here. If nothing else, it's at least just making me think of that kind of imagery, right? But then there's the question of like, okay, why is it not drawn this way if they're just trying to show you like a unit circle or something? So let's swap over to Photoshop now real quick. This is the image in Photoshop. So there's not only these 3 main symbols, but there's also all the other ones, right? You've got these. And it's interesting because the resolution on the image is pretty low in the background for this thing that's going on back there that we'll talk about in a minute. But the resolution is high enough with the overall image render that these symbols are very easily distinguishable, which means that we're meant to be able to see them really clearly, right? So this is a good sign that Bungie's really teasing us with something actually actionable here. And if we look at them, some of them aren't really particularly clear what they might be referring to. Like what the hell is this, right? You've got this box here seemingly, and these are the 9 symbols.
That box that he's pointing to right there, I'm pretty sure that is a hypercube, which showing my nerd side a little bit here, guys, sorry. But a hypercube is basically like I forget, is it a 4th or 5th dimensional cube? It's basically like what a cube would be in like the 5th dimension or 6th dimension. So it's like a higher plane, but like a plane we can't perceive. I don't know how to explain it, guys. But just Google hypercube. And what's funny is it's actually a Call of Duty Easter egg thing. Is the hypercube was actually a big part of the COD Zombies Easter eggs. So, but that's what that looks like to me. That looks like a hypercube.
Again, and then what the hell is this thing on the side? But you do have this here, and to me that just looks very simply like an angle of 90 degrees. Right?
Yeah, inside a
filled
circle.
in, though, on a circle. It's just that the rest of the circle is not drawn. Like, this would be the rest of the circle, and it looks like they've just filled in their little 90-degree segment there. So when I saw that, I was like, what other, like, mathematical things could they be playing with here for these symbols that we're being shown? Like, for example, is this just an empty axis? Is that what's going on? And then if that's what's going on there, what does that then tell us about this next symbol? Or what does that tell us about the stuff that's further? Like, what does that tell us about this weird line, for instance? Like, is this just meant to indicate Y? If this is like a Y axis and we're going to translate all of these? If so, does this sort of translate to like an XY? Is this even a message we can read? Like, this was the sort of stuff that was percolating in my brain, right? But then before I went any further on sort of trying to suss out the specifics of what these could translate to if it was a code of some sort, I thought, hold on, let me get a more holistic idea of how these have been presented to us. So I did a little bit of analysis of the distance of separation of all of the symbols, because it's quite varied. Like, if we go up to this corner here, you can see that these are pretty equally spaced out, right? Like, those look like they're pretty much in line with one another. But then up here, there's a much bigger gap, and then a seemingly middle-sized gap and a middle-sized gap. So, like, what? So if I reveal what's behind this little screen here, we've got two things that I've done. Number one is I've drawn over the symbols just to make them a bit easier to see for the purpose of this YouTube video.
Okay.
The second is I've traced out the distances between all of the symbols as presented, and I've shown which ones are uniformly distant from one another and which ones are a weird distance apart. And all of them are set such that I'm drawing from what I presume is the middle of each symbol to the middle of the next symbol, as opposed to, for example, going from like the right-hand side of this one to the right-hand side of that one or the left-hand side of that. I'm not doing it that way. Now, there are a few interesting observations that come of this immediately, right? First of all, it's very hard to make out, but there are actually dots in the corner of this leftmost symbol here. So if I take this away, you can see very faintly there are 4 dots on there. So that's why I've drawn those dots in. I think that's going to be very easy for people to miss. So let's talk about the distances.
I'm not sure about
They're very odd. They're very, very odd. This distance to here is different from this distance to here. Basically, every different color of distance is a different...
I would like to point out, he said he did the middle of each symbol to the middle of each symbol. That red line is not drawn to the middle of that symbol. It's on the left edge of that symbol. He's assuming that that symbol is a full circle and therefore that's the middle. That's not the middle of the symbol. And that can be very important because if you look at the distance of the green line to the red line, if you move that red line over to the middle of that symbol, I bet that red line and green line are damn near equal. Just want to point that out. Sorry guys, again, having a nerd moment.
Distance. So different distance to this is different to this, but then these symbols are equidistant. This to this to this to this, equidistant. And then we have a separate form of equidistance. We've got this to this and this to this. Those are the same distance, but that red distance is different to the blue distance and the orange distance.
Again, if you look at the last two symbols, he put the line on the left side of the symbol, not the center of the symbol. See, he's messing up there. I bet if you took that pink line, the very last line, took that pink line and stretched it out to the middle, it might be damn near dead on the blue lines. Or the yellow. It might be on the yellow line. Because again, that yellow line... No, that yellow line would be way too short. Because again, the yellow line isn't accurate either because he went from the left edge, not the middle. So the yellow line is wrong and the distance on the last line is wrong.
But it is also similar to this red distance here. Then we've got this sort of magenta distance. That's, again, different to all the other distances in its row. Then we've got these ones. So this is now the top right stuff that we're looking at. These are the same. So these are equidistant. They're centers. But then we've got this big gap. And then we've got this, which is kind of weird because you've got a smaller gap than this sort of bluish one. But then you've also got another distance that isn't quite the same as the pink. You see how that's very slightly different? So that's an unusual one. I kind of wonder if that's been done so they could fit this character in before it sort of spilled off the side of the page. Because if you look at it, it's actually kind of being cut off. And it might have been fully cut off if the distance was uniform. So maybe that's why that's been done there. Or maybe I'm just looking too much into the distances overall. But the fact that some were the same, like this red and this red and this red, and this blue and this blue and this blue, and some were completely different, made me very curious. Usually when I'm looking at code breaking stuff, any pattern I can find is information. You can learn from everything. And it's just about being smart and assessing what that learning is actually telling you that you are then able to start sort of breaking the codes. So this was the first thing that I did. That was my first observation. Then I thought, okay, what else can I infer from some of the symbols present here? Well, let's, for example, have a think about this bottom right-hand corner, because this is probably the most easily explanatory area. So if I take away my little drawing for a second here so we can see the originals, this is the numero sign, which you've probably seen before.
Number sign.
This is a symbol that you've probably also seen before, even if you don't recognize it. It's delta. And this is another symbol you've probably seen before, even if you don't recognize it, and it's lambda. These are Greek letters, and each of them has a corresponding numeric value in the Greek numeric system, and those respectively would be 4 and 30. So numero 430. Numero in English pretty much stands for number, but it also
April 30th?
Sort of suggests ordinal numbers. So that's basically numbers that dictate the order of something. So this could perhaps be intended to be interpreted as a 4th 30th, and that starts to sound a lot like a date to me. The 30th of the 4th, 2025, that would be April 30th. And so that, if we look at my calendar here, would be pretty soon, actually. It would be about 2 weeks away. It's a Wednesday instead of a Tuesday, which is a little unusual, but it's about a week before the April 6th reveal that we're going to be getting of Edge of the, what's it called? Edge of the Fate. So this could be a key date, right? It could be, but I have no idea. Let's keep moving through some of our symbol analysis and see what else we can dig out. We then have, let's say, these 3 symbols. And these are interesting because I was trying to think, all right, we have this symbol here with the dots showing up both on this strip, which is the one from the right-hand corner, and this strip from the bottom
clearly
left-hand
see the
corner.
dots on that.
So that means there's a shared alphabet present here. Similarly, this symbol in the middle of the sort of sun-looking thing is also present here. So that's good. That gives us a lot of information about these being from a like set.
Okay.
And I was trying to think, okay, if this is just a star, for example, what might these other things refer to if these are indeed all related to this star? Because there's clearly different symbols from different kind of families here. Like, it feels like there's the 9 family of these symbols, and then there's maybe another family here, and then the star symbols are their own family, and that probably relates to what this is, and this probably is also the star.
Okay, so like by family, I'm guessing he means like kind of like how the Fallen have different factions, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's different factions of the 9. That's what I'm assuming he's like trying to get at here. I don't know. It's hard because like I said, Milo has very limited knowledge of Destiny 2 lore. So he's an extremely gifted code breaker though. Extremely gifted.
Family. So I was trying to think, okay, if this is within a set of star symbols, then what might their meaning be? It looks like in this instance, there is a star present, right? That's what this looks like it's representing, is a star. And then these are the spikes, the diffraction spikes specifically, coming off the star. But in this case, we don't have this central symbol. So what is the meaning of this when there is no star present? And then there are also these lines present. Now, one of my ideas for this was it might be that this is actually indicating the axis. So the orientation of these 3 symbols might actually be with this as their x-axis. That might kind of be what's going on there, is it's sort of meant to be interpreted like that. So if you tilt your head to the side, then this is
That's what I was doing.
And that is going along your sort of x-axis, so to speak, and then this would be your y-axis. So it could be that that's sort of what's going on here with these lines. Like they could be representative of your horizon line, is what you would call that. Because I was also thinking like, okay, are we sort of defining some kind of orbit here? Like, is this essentially, and I'm not drawing this relative to anything else in the image, I'm just sort of drawing it on its own here, but is that basically to say that the sort of orbit goes along like this, and then this is sort of traveling in that direction? I don't know. This was at this point just sort of me feeling around in the dark. If that was the case, then it makes this one a little odd, right? Like, why do you have the 4 dots like this, and you still have no star in the middle, but you do have the dots? It's strange. And then with this one,
to me, real quick, to me, the 4 dots in the middle of the X and Y axis is almost like it's not almost like it is. It's 4 different quadrants. And so I feel like maybe that's Bungie saying we're going to be visiting 4 different new areas. You know what I mean? I don't know. Just reaching here, guys.
If this is your horizon, then that means looking at it side on, you've kind of got this blob below the horizon and this blob above the horizon. What does it mean? So I kept thinking, and then I was like, okay, let's scrap that idea. What if this is something else entirely? And I was thinking, what does this remind me of, right? It reminds me of a few things. First of all, you obviously have the infinity symbol in here just sort of sneakily portrayed amongst the rest of the image. But it's not just that, because you've also got these parts of it filled in, right? So I don't think it's just trying to kind of cornerly be an infinity symbol. So then I thought, okay, well, this sort of makes me think of how binary star systems work.
That's what I was thinking.
In a typical binary star system like this, you might have an orbit, and these things are called Roche lobes. The problem with Roche lobes is that they're not typically symmetrical in this same way, because you don't have perfectly equal masses of your binary stars. So it's like, okay, that's sort of spacey.
To me, it kind of feels like it's like a scale. Like, not to get too much into like, like, what would that be? Egypt mythology? Where like, who is it? The god of death is that, fuck, I can't think of his name. Anubis, right? Is it Anubis? I can't fucking remember. Dude, I have so much information. I forgot more than I learned. I think in the Egyptian mythology, there's a god that will like weigh your heart, and like that determines whether you get into the afterlife or not. The good place or whatever. That's what came to mind when I first seen it, and it kind of makes sense because Bungie has played around a lot with Egyptian mythology, especially if you're a Trials player. It is all over Trials. So this might be a way for Bungie to bring Trials mythology into Destiny and try to make like more PvE players that are really into the lore want to get more into Trials so that they can learn more about the lore through having to play Trials, maybe? I don't know. Like I said, obviously these are all theories, but that would be one way to do it, because I know that recently Bungie has been really trying to figure out a way to get more players into Trials. PvP overall, but especially Trials, because it's so sweaty. And that would be one way they could incorporate it, is say, hey, if you want to know more about the lore and things like that, we're going to be, having these elements introduced in the Trials of Osiris. Again, who knows?
He is giving me those sorts of vibes, but not maybe quite right. And then I started thinking, okay, could there be something here that's sort of intended to be like an eclipse situation? Like, is something being perfectly eclipsed by something else here? Oh, yeah. Could it be that these two bodies are one and body two, and this is body one, body two, and then this is essentially showing the light that would be being emitted by body one would then end up with kind of this sort of thing going on. Then you'd have your kind of umbra here, which is the shadow directly behind the object there. You'd have your penumbras here, and then you would have an antumbra where this sort of extended. And
okay, that's why he was talking about going in and doing the Last Wish. Not sure how much you're going to learn from Last Wish, though, man. That raid has been beaten to death. Like, who knows? There might be some hidden Easter eggs that we haven't found after all these years, but
crossed over, this would be where your antumbra would be. So I was like, okay, is it trying to kind of give us that kind of energy or vibe? And if it is, then why? And so generally I was sort of stumped on that a little bit. And then I was like, okay, maybe let's take a look at some of the other images. Let's go back to this original one. Why are these spikes even there in the first place, right? And this is a question you might have asked yourself before. Like, why, when I look at a picture, let's get a good picture here. Here we go. An astronomical picture. Why do I see these crosses, right? Like, why is that there in the first place? Turns out that those are there because of the way that telescopes will be constructed, and you'll be taking a picture through a telescope, but you've got this secondary mirror in the back here, and depending on how that mirror is mounted, you'll get light diffracting around it, and that will cause corresponding diffraction patterns on the pictures themselves. And depending on the shape of that mirror, you get a different diffraction pattern. So in the case of our cross here, we've got these crosses that are created, which is essentially the same as this, plus creating these pluses. But then with different shapes of mount, you get different patterns formed. And so then I was looking at this and I was like, okay, this is really interesting now because this, for example, this symbol here is really reminiscent, at least to my complete spinfoil hat brain, of the font that they're using for the Edge of Fate. Like all of this, like this reminds me of what we were just looking at in a really big way, right? Like why would you write an O like this? Unless it's meant to be kind of directionally talking about the same sort of stuff, or indeed maybe this is a thing to do with just some kind of geometry in general, in which case that kind of ties into some of the stuff that we've been talking about our very weird little right triangle that we can see constructed on this symbol here. So this is where my head went, right? This is where my head went, and I was sort of trying to think it through and think about it. There's two other things that I want to point out before I move on to this next point here.
You see
one
smoke
is
coming out of his
this symbol here is interesting because what this is this is a rotation of this. This is the same, okay? It's just without the circle. And that was very interesting to me. And again, when I'm thinking about codes and code construction, if we've already got stuff that is geometric and it's making me think about circles and things, and then we've got a clue here, which reads on the x-axis, and we've got a clue here that is written up the y-axis, there is a rotation that has happened there to go from one to the other. Similarly, we are seeing a rotation here from this to this, right? And so I'm now thinking, okay, rotation is part of the way they've encoded this. Rotation is important. The second thing that I said I was going to mention was this box here. This is a weird one because so much of the rest of the code is using other symbols. And so they each seem to correspond to their own families. Like I was saying before, it's like we've got this.
This is like really, it's really frustrating because, like I said, Milo is a genius when it comes to this stuff. And I feel like if he knew more of the Destiny 2 lore, and then if he realized that that was a hypercube, like that's what I'm like 90% sure that's a hypercube, man. I could be wrong, but if he realized that was a hypercube and he knew the Destiny lore like down to a T, I feel like he might be able to crack this, dude. But those two things are really important, man, and I don't know, it makes a big difference. Especially with the hypercube, because I feel like that's Bungie saying that they are going to introduce, I hate to say it, like, maybe not multiverse, but maybe different dimensions. Like, we're going to get different dimensional beings, you know, things that aren't from this dimension, but from another dimension. Like, think about it. Where else would you go in the storyline? Like, we've finally defeated the greatest evil, the final shape. We finally beat the Witness that led up for 10 years. It's like, okay, where are we going to go from here? You don't necessarily want to do multiverse because, let's face it, we're all getting burnt out on multiverse storylines. So what if we introduce beings from a different dimension? And these things could be so dangerous because they're interdimensional. They could just appear and disappear just like that. Like, try fighting something they could basically, just enter into our realm and out of our realm at will. Which we kind of have, like, we have teleportation in Destiny 2, which is kind of the same concept, or, you're going through. But, I don't know. I'm like, my wheels are just spinning. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Family here. Then we've separately got this family here, which also has this in it. And this is also part of that family. We've got this family here of these two, of this, and of this. The line, maybe that's the green family again. The circle, maybe it's this same family here. But then this box is like an outlier. It doesn't seem to fit in a family with any of the other shapes that are present within our code. So we should sort of take a look at it and take a crack at it and see what it might be meaning to represent. And it's odd because you've got a box that seems to be being drawn here. And if I was to sort of draw this out very roughly, just by hand, this looks at face value like a cube being drawn, right? Like that's a pretty normal drawing of a cube. Maybe my version of it is a little bit pointy. But the issue is that, number one, they're showing you the base of the cube, right? So like this up to there, and then like this, like that. So that would be the base of the cube. If we're calling this top bit the top face, right? I know that you can obviously see it two different ways, but let's assume that that is the case. They're showing us the base of the cube with this line just here, right? That would be the base of the cube. But the thing that's weird is that these lines don't stop here. In this image, you can see this line actually continues past to here. And this line continues past to here. So what that means is that this actually goes like this, and this goes like this. Now, it's going to be a little sketchy to continue drawing this with without the proper form. So let me pull up one I drew earlier. Here we go. So this is how we can kind of illustrate the weirdness that's going on here. If we were sort of drawing our cube normally, we could say, okay, this is the top side like this. Then maybe let's go for another side that would be here. Let's go another side that would be here. You'd have the base, for example, that would be down there, like that. But then what do these two lines represent, right? Like, what is that? Is that meant to indicate that the top face is continuing? And if it's continuing, this starts to not look like a shape that my brain can understand. And you can sort of think about it a few ways. Like, for example, what if what we're seeing here is actually sort of like a diamond container, right? So if this is a diamond like this, imagine that this is all the front face, right? And then this is the back face here. So let's say that's the back face, yeah? This could then be something that you could put things in it, right? Like something could kind of tuck in there. Between this face here and this face here. There'd be this gap. So I was like, okay, is that what I'm kind of being shown? Am I being shown this container thing? But then this line is weird because, again, same problem happens where you'd expect this because you're going to have this dip in the container, right? And then this is also going to do the same thing. It's going to dip in the container in this way. And this is your base of the container, all of this stuff. But then again, the question is, what's the deal with this line and this line? Like, it's this same problematic line here that we're just like, what? And again, if we look at it here, like, it would be so simple for these lines to not be there and for this to just be a regular ass looking cube like that, drawn in this way. Oh, there is a line going down there. I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't draw that in this. Okay, yeah, there should be a line here as well. But yeah, in this way, like, when drawn like this, cool, looks like a cube, bro, but it's this deviation from normal cubiness, which I think is the most interesting part of it, right? And so that, again, because I'm this whole time I'm pattern matching and I'm trying to find contrast in things as well. I'm asking myself, if this is seemingly some form of cube but with an extra line, are we seeing some form of cube with an extra line somewhere else? Are we seeing, for example, the rotation actually that we saw like here? This could be indicating.
Yeah, I'm really surprised that, like, he doesn't think that it's a hyper. Now I'm starting to doubt myself. Like to me at first it was obvious. I was like, oh, that looks like a hypercube. But the fact that Milo doesn't think so is now making me question everything because he is way better at this stuff than I am.
That we just need to rotate 90 degrees. That might be this might be not a symbol that translates to a letter, but this might be an instruction, right? This could be a command saying rotate, do this rotation. That might be why in this image here, we then rotate and we end up with this image here, which we know is rotated because these are on their side. If these were rotated to be the right way up and it was just top to bottom, I wouldn't be suggesting that this rotation was still present. But so then, therefore, in the same way that this might be indicative of a rotation, what does that mean for this box, right? What do we infer from it? Do we infer a letter or do we infer an instruction? So bringing all of these ideas together now, because I probably sound insane, but I am kind of going somewhere with this. The whole thing just generally kind of reminds me of these like IQ test puzzles that you'll see. If you've ever done an IQ test.
Real quick before he goes on too far, I will put up, because now he's talking about rotation and things like that. And one of the only ways to really understand what I'm talking about when I talk about a hypercube is to kind of see it rotate. So I'll try to find a video of a hypercube that's rotating so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. And that might be, why they're saying like rotate, like rotate it. It's a hypercube. I don't know. Again, he's much smarter than I am. So
you've probably seen some stuff like this where you will have a sequence of shapes or a sequence of things, and you'll have to correctly identify what the next thing in the sequence would be out of maybe a list of potential examples. So this could be one such example test where it's like, okay, I'm starting to get a pattern here, and I have to figure out what the next thing is in the pattern. And you've got all these lines, and you've got these shapes, and the different shading of the shapes, and you have to figure it out. And as a little brain teaser for you, maybe you guys can take a shot at this particular puzzle in the comment section down below. But the reason I bring this up is it feels really reminiscent of that to me, where it's like we're being given individual pieces of a puzzle, and some of these things are letters, I believe. I do think that this is just probably indicative of 4 and 30, but others, I think, are more instructional, or they're representative of the pattern, and it's now on us to say, okay, what's the pattern and how do I apply it? So asking that question, I think that where you sort of end up is that I think these could potentially be instructions, right? I think they could be what you'd sort of call in maths transformations, right? So this transform would be to rotate by 90 degrees. Perhaps this transform is quite simply to reflect.
Mirror.
Right?
Yeah,
Seeing
I was
as
mirror.
my binary star system idea was a bit weird because they were both the exact same size, maybe all that's happening is that there's a reflection taking place, right? So maybe it's a horizontal flip. Then this line here, seeing as it doesn't have the dots in the corner that this had, I don't think this is necessarily just a y-axis, and also based on the fact that it's got a very short distance, it feels a little odd. So this might just be a dividing line between this section and this next section. Maybe? It's kind of difficult to say, but it may be part of this sequence, especially seeing as these distances are all the same. Maybe that sort of does suggest it's part of the sequence. And if so, looking at these as a set of 4, what might we be able to read of these? And how might we then continue to transform them if this is another transform, right? Because we're going back to letters here, remember. And if these are our transform characters, which I've been drawing in this sort of pinkish color, like, are we getting transform letters? If so, are we getting transform letters or numbers in this case? And if that theory is right, then what exactly do these transformations indicate? Because this one I can kind of surmise some guesses about, but it's harder to with some of the rest here. I think the idea of these being transforms and these ones in red just being the sort of letters of what we're seeing up here is pretty decent as well, seeing as with the distances that I indicated, these are all like distances from one another, then there's this larger gap, and then these are like distances.
Yeah, but again, like, not all of his distances are correct, like I pointed out, so the way if that is correct, the way I would translate it is the one with the 4 quadrants would be like divide the quadrants up into 4, then mirror them, and then rotate 90 degrees. So those would be your instructions. So divide, mirror, rotate. I don't know. Again, that's just the way that it seems like it would work to me.
And this is just indented so that it doesn't go off the edge of the page, right? It feels like these are meant to be kind of grouped in that way. Now, what does that mean for our April 30th idea? I think there's a good chance that it means that it's not saying April 30th, and there's a transformation that needs to be applied to this in order for us to get the proper code. And it might even be, maybe, that this is a release date, potentially, for the expansion that we could figure out beforehand.
Well, as soon as I saw the 30th symbol, it made me think of an upside down 5 symbol. So I was like, oh, 5. And then the 4 symbol, like, no matter which way you rotate the 4 symbol, it seems like it's going to be pretty much the 4 symbol. Like, it's a triangle. What are you going to do? You're going to rotate it. It's going to be a triangle. You're going to rotate it. So to me, if you flip the 30 symbol, made it 5, combine that with the 4 symbol, that's 9. You get the 9.
But equally, it could be something else entirely. I mean, we have Nico's reminder here. The middle one, right, like this, is the kind of enter symbol for dares. And that's what we're seeing here, right? Which, interestingly, is at the end of this sequence of 3 symbol inputs. So if it's enter, could it be that this is basically the submission symbol? Where it's like, okay, you do your 3 symbols, and then you kind of hit enter, so to speak, right? And then you do your next transform.
Well, that'd be
this
two
transform's
symbols.
just going to be this. And then we're going to do this, and we've got this version of it as well. And maybe there's a...
Okay, so again, he misspoke. He counted that line, the one that's just a line that I believe is probably just a divider, like he said earlier. That's not one of the symbols. So take that in context. That would mean, oh, unless he's, okay, but he circled those three. Okay, then enter. Yeah. So you have two symbols, then enter, and then the little starter thingy that he's calling a, directive, and then you have two more symbols, which makes sense. Two symbols, enter, and then flip them, rotate them, do whatever, and then two more symbols, enter. Okay. So this is how this is all playing out in my head. I'm a big dummy though, so
another symbol here that we've got cut off, or maybe these are just meant to be a set of two. So overall, now I think that the last piece of the puzzle here that's really interesting to me is that this in the background of the whole thing appears to be an eclipse, right? There appears to be a celestial body
or
in the
black
background
hole
being eclipsed by this structure, this moon, this whatever it might be. We don't know what it is.
Well, again, going back to my whole trials theory, that looks like Mercury, right? So it looks like Mercury, which was a huge, like, Osiris expansion, right? Is being eclipsed by something. So maybe I was onto something when I said this might have something to do with, a little bit of Trials lore.
And I don't know enough about Destiny lore because, like,
No,
we're
you do
streaming
not.
Last Wish as a blind solve this weekend. And then I'm going to do all the other raids. So, like, I'm behind in the lore, right? If you want to watch that stream, twitch.tv/MrRoflWaffles to tune in for it. But we've got this eclipse in the background. And so the idea of all of these maybe being related to orbits or eclipses again, in the same way that we were talking about this, right? And I mean, your Antumbra, if you were in the Antumbra looking this way, you would basically be seeing what we're seeing here. So maybe the raid is going to be called like Antumbra of the Nine or something. Like, who knows, God. Right? But it feels to me like the astronomical influence of the stuff in the background combined with the idea that these might be instructive, combined with the fact that some of them we can decode, so to speak, pretty easily, really makes me think that this might lead to some information before the stream itself. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of other teaser asset or something prior to the stream date, which tells us some more stuff. And if not, it might be that it's during the stream we find some of this stuff out, or it could be that we learn more about some of this stuff in, what's it called? Trials of the Nine? Is that the name of it? I think that's the name of it. I haven't got it on the board anymore.
Trials of Osiris.
But the new mode launching on that same day, remember?
Wait.
It's no coincidence.
Oh, see, now I look like a fool. I didn't know we were getting in Trials of the Nine back, because wasn't Trials of the Nine from Destiny 1? And I correct? Didn't they replace Trials of the Nine with Trials of Osiris? I can't remember, but this would all make sense. Like, why I keep talking about Trials and like Mercury and bringing back Trials of the Nine. Now everything's starting to make sense in my head. Okay, I get it.
That on May 6th, we're getting that new mode with the reprise of Prophecy and Spire and stuff, when we're also then getting all these 9 teasers and there's codes in these. Like, maybe there's going to be these codes extended in those dungeons. Who knows? And there's even a possibility in my head that, similar to how we have all the symbols...
Oh, wait. I did know they were bringing back the dungeon. I didn't realize they were calling them Trials of the Nine. But I did know they were bringing back the dungeons and they were doing the whole thing with the Nine. I remember that. I remember watching that.
Used, for example, in the fight with Kerev, where you've got to understand, okay, this means witness, this means drink, this means guardian. I think that's something that Destiny likes doing, like Bungie likes doing.
Yeah.
So maybe they're starting to give us a new alphabet of commands here, so that when this expansion launches in the raid, they can show us these symbols and we'll know, okay, you show me those 2 spheres next to each other, that means reflect. you show me the quarter circle, that means rotate 90 degrees. Like, we might be being trained now with things that we are going to need later in raid-like activities. Maybe. A question I would ask you, those of you that know more about Destiny lore and have also like played the dungeons that I haven't played and stuff, is, are there any other smart inferences we can make about what these 9 symbols, these symbols, right, what they mean? Like, if they were actions, if they were telling you like enter or shoot or jump, how would we make those inferences, and what that might then contribute to this puzzle would be really interesting to also know. Either way, I have been neck deep in Marathon ARG for the last 2 weeks, so I'm a bit nuts right now. But if that's a bit nuts that you guys encourage and want to see more of, I'm sort of new to the Destiny community. I'd love some just encouragement in the comments section, to be honest, just to let me know that this is something that you want to actually see me do again. Or if you think that I'm just wasting oxygen, let me know, I guess. But assuming that's not your opinion, stay tuned for me to continue to kind of cook and percolate on this over the next few weeks. We'll dig into it on stream a little bit more as well, and see if we can kind of come up with any kind of spinfoil hat theories as to what might be being indicated here. Because I think that there is a good chance this is juicy. Thanks for watching for now, folks. I'll see you next time.
Thank you. So real quick, I just wanted to say that once again, like, Milo is a crazy talented content creator when it comes to solving things like ciphers, Easter eggs, anything that's to do with that. Incredible. Like, it almost boggles my mind. I've said for years that it boggles my mind that more Call of Duty zombie content creators don't get into Destiny 2 because of how rich the Destiny 2 lore is, and how like I've made videos where I said, like, you know, when you get a new raid, it's almost like getting a new zombie map. And you have to, figuring out the raid is kind of like figuring out a zombie Easter egg. You know, you have to figure out the mechanics and the different steps and the things you have to do. And I've always compared the two. And so it's always, you know, kind of boggled my mind that, like, very few content creators made the leap. Like I did, luckily. Like, back in the day, I made the leap from COD Zombies over to Destiny 1. And, you know, start covering the crap out of Destiny 1. And that led to Destiny 2. And I still do some Call of Duty zombie stuff in the, you know, a rare occasion. But I'm mostly Destiny 2 nowadays. But yeah, we would love to have Milo. Milo he's so good at this stuff that, yeah, you're more than welcome, buddy. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for more. So, I'm the one and only Z. Bye-bye.